welcome yourselves back to War Thunder. It's a tricky thing to balance maps according with, well, some of the vehicles that we have in game now. I remember back in 2015 when it was just like a Panzer III and a Panzer IV, and this, Karelia, this very same map, was the only map in ground forces. But as the game has grown, more vehicles have been added. Gaijin Entertainment hasn't necessarily updated any of these maps, expanded them, or made them better. Instead, what they've decided to do was nerf traction outright. Yeah, Leopard tanks are supposed to be able to do this, whereas in-game they sort of perform like a poor World War I reenactment. Anyway, the footage you're seeing in the background is me and a bunch of mates going off Karelia on one of the exploitative positions. You can see directly into B. You just climb up this hill just slightly, and I mean, no vehicle should probably be able to do that, but for some reason it works. And I guess it comes down to what type of vehicle are you actually looking at. But it doesn't fucking matter, because Gaijin Entertainment makes some of the worst maps that I've seen out of any video game. Granted, they never really update them for what is current. It's almost quite like the new maps are just flat, no gun depression, no sort of interesting gameplay elements. In fact, what you get is a hodgepodge of just 3 capture zones and 2 spawns at either side, and a square map that seems to be rather League of Legends-like with 3 distinct corridors. What happens is people just push W until they reach the enemy spawn and they spawn camp. And with the horsepower per ton you get with more modern vehicles, the age-old question is, how long can you sustain this? And reality is, people just end up by driving into people's spawns. So how do you solve a problem like that? Well, Gaijin Entertainment have done 2 things. They've increased spawn costs for vehicles. In that regard, that the spawn points themselves are directly tied to what you can and can't spawn in, depending on what you've actually done in a match. 2, they have also included a safe area around a spawn where an enemy will not be able to fire, and they'll be lit up in a certain radius around that spawn, so that any people who are spawning there will particularly be able to know and hit that particular target. Now, the other thing they could have done, instead of nerfing traction to all vehicles, and instead of just removing elements from maps and making the map smaller just to suit gameplay, rather they should have instead just looked and addressed the issues at hand. Your maps are bloody garbage, and people are noticing this and using that to their advantage. 38th Parallel is a map that comes to mind when I think about exploitative maps. People climbing up to the very top of the hill at the very back with things that they shouldn't be able to do, because Gaijin didn't put a concrete barrier down. So what did they do instead? They shrunk the map, making it even narrower and even harder to play, and harder to flank, and harder to sort of play out the game regularly. And then they nerf traction across the board, meaning the weakest of vehicles that were already weak get weaker, while those that are of medium terrain and medium movement end up by getting screwed over. So what do you do about this? Well, you make the maps larger, you stop restricting the spawns, and you give cover to every side of the map, and honestly, just run the data on each map from each side. Certain sides, on certain maps, have the upper hand and advantage. For example, on Abandoned Factory, you can go off, if you spawn on the left-hand side, you just go drive up towards the factory, shoot directly down into the enemy spawn. It's not conducive to any sort of forms of gameplay, and doesn't help anyone. The reality is, I shouldn't be able to climb this area, I shouldn't even be able to go up here, let alone shoot from about 500 meters away from at least this position. Granted, this is the earliest map that is in War Thunder, probably needs to be relegated to tiers, but maybe the answer isn't necessarily opening up the maps or restricting field of play or doing anything like that. Instead, it's restricting maps to a certain tier or a certain BR range, and allowing that BR range, as you climb the ranks, expand into allowing, you know, bigger maps for the bigger vehicles that obviously go a lot faster. And with this, just move the forward heli bases that sit on most of the maps just back another 5 kilometers or so. Gives helicopters a little more breathing space, a little more flying time. And obviously then don't remove or restrict, you know, anti-aircraft loadouts when it comes to, you know, your team driving an automatic, for example, or an ADATS. It's the same thing why I don't want to be playing Malta in my jet aircraft doing Mach 2 and instantly getting shot at from about a kilometre away. That's not fun for anyone. Yet you spawn in a 1930s biplane and have to get Spain and then have to fly for 45 minutes. It's just not Like, who the fuck comes up with these stupid ideas all the time? And I've done videos on this in the past, yet they reformat a map and everybody goes, okay, that's nice, and we just get on with spawn camping. It's just, there's no real solid solution here. And is it really a problem? Well, no, but is it also the cause or the root cause of some of the problems that create toxicity and have issues within the game? Sure. So maybe just design better maps and let the community test them and have feedback for them. I'm just sick of horrible map design. And as an air player, I don't have all the solutions. Let me know what you think down in the comments down below.